Hey everybody, I need to interrupt this video really quickly because I want to give a shout out to Cove Audio for sending us this Bluetooth speaker. We've been using these for a long time. If you guys have seen our previous videos, there was a version 1 of this speaker that we use around here a lot. Cove Audio has now launched version 2 of that speaker. It's a much bigger unit. It has a driver on both ends, which is really nice. And one of the really cool features that I love about this thing is that it actually quarter turn twists. You take it apart. The audio coming out of these little speakers is absolutely epic. It lights up this whole 6,000 square foot shop. If you don't want to use it as 2 units, it's a simple click together like that, and boom, you can lay it on its side, you can stand it up however you want. You can actually use this as a speakerphone as well. So it has a built-in microphone. Set this up on the table when you're having a call that you need to go hands-free. It's a great product, and at 60% off, you can't beat the price. Click the link in the description down below. Get yourself a Cove Bluetooth speaker and give it a whirl. Welcome back to the Throttle channel, everybody. I'm Mickey Anjade, and today we're going to be working on my EK9, or in the US market, EJ6 hatchback Honda Civic. As you guys know, if you've watched our previous videos, you know that we've installed a K20A2 engine into the front-wheel drive EK or EJ platform. This is normally a front-wheel drive setup, and the motor would usually be turned sideways. We've custom made a subframe as well as motor mounts and everything to configure this in a rear-wheel drive format. So today I'm actually going to be tackling the transmission tunnel. So we've got an S2000 transmission mated to a K20 engine. You guys can see I have the factory piece of floor pan that was cut out. It used to be down here, and you can see how much material has to be added in order to make that all work. I retained this since we cut it out months and months ago because I kind of want to reuse it. My thought process behind this whole project has been to make this car as Honda as possible. And the reason I want to keep that is because I really want to retain that shape and the look of the factory Civic. So I think what I'm going to try to do is trim this factory piece back to where it has some nice even flanges on the sides. Basically new side pieces that will connect the top to the bottom, and we'll weld all that in and close it out. And what I like is that it actually allows the factory Civic shifter cutout to accept the S2000 gear selector. And what I did was I went ahead and jumped on Honda Parts online and found the factory shift boot and locking collar for it, so that we can actually seal this from the outside world, so that none of the dust or elements or anything in an off-track excursion can get inside the cockpit. And I think it'll be a nice clean look. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start trimming up this factory panel and getting it ready to get mounted in the car. Okay, now that I got the piece trimmed up, I got the sides nice and straight. So essentially, we need to create space here. So between the seat and the tunnel. And by squeezing these 2 edges in, I was able to create enough space that we can slide seats in and out. So now that that's nice and straight, I think I might want to do this down here as well. I'm gonna take it down to here, all the way down to the bottom of this green tape. And that way we're just cutting a piece of metal that's pretty much square. And what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna slip that metal in between these 2 pieces of floor pan where they come together. One thing I'm learning in this process is I always wonder, what gauge metal should I use? Rule of thumb from my friend that's built a lot of race cars and stuff was always measure the material you're removing and then just try to match that, because the factory used that size metal for a reason. Okay, so I went ahead and tacked the existing piece of tunnel into the car. I just used a couple little 1/8 inch rods. I've gone ahead and decided that I'm actually going to call an audible here, since we need to modify this portion of the tunnel as well, because as you can see, this sits much higher than the floor. So it's important for us to actually get this situated before we start welding in any panels. I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove the exhaust tunnel in its entirety, and it's going to reconnect back to where it used to be connected and then come down at an angle right there. I've got it loose now, as you can see, but the little posts I welded in are now holding it together. So I'm going to go ahead and knock those out. So right now I'm just taking some time to clean up the rear portion of the tunnel, getting it ready so that it can be usable for the top section. And so that's going to require removing some of these braces underneath, because they're no longer going to be connected, so there's no sense in carrying this weight around with the car. Alright guys, so fast forward about 20 minutes. I went ahead and just tacked this in because I want to see what it looks like. I put a little extension back here just to hold it in its basically flat location. I'll obviously have to make a trim panel that goes in there and closes that up. But I wanted to take a step back and just see how it looks. I think the natural slope is really cool. It's very supercar-ish, the way it kind of just slopes towards the back. A lot of the new, like the C8 and a lot of the McLarens and stuff like that, actually have a really cool sloped tunnel like that. I'm hoping I can do some nice sheet metal work on the sides and clean it up a bit and make it look a lot more finished. It's just kind of interesting. I'm new to the whole like welding and fab world, so I've been around fabricators for a long time, but I've never actually fabbed stuff up myself. This is a fun process. It's really weird being like COVID time and being here by myself, because I don't really have anybody to bounce ideas off of and stuff. Usually Ricky and I are really good about going back and forth, and during these times we can't. It's just me here. So I have been FaceTiming Ricky and kind of going back and forth with him. We decided we would give this a whirl. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to getting the engine out, because I gotta start by building that base plate around the tunnel. I could have just cut a square hole in the firewall and made it a lot easier on myself, just making everything angular. It would have been a lot easier. But from the front, from the engine side, I want it to look almost like an OEM tunnel. So adding some material in there and bending it around will allow me to mate the top of the tunnel to the chassis, and then I can work out how to connect it to the two. Alright guys, well I'm going to go ahead and call an audible here. I had every intention of doing some bead rolls on these side panels, but I think the gauge steel that we chose is actually pretty sturdy, and I don't think that it actually needs it other than for aesthetics. And the fact that I'm going to be covering this up anyway, I'm just going to skip that step. So I'm going to go ahead and actually fit these panels back in here. And I'm going to go ahead and use some self-tapping screws to mount it basically. I learned this trick from my boy Jimmy Oaks. basically just put the screws in it and get it set. That way we know everything fits. We can continue fabbing, and then we'll go back and remove those screws at a later time and put welds in those holes so everything holds together. I just put the self tappers in. It's definitely not the prettiest look in the world, but as far as functionality, that actually works really good. So these are basically, the screws will all come back out, and those will all get welded up, those holes. I'm probably gonna weld along the seam as well, just for good measure, buff it all back, make it all nice and shiny. Yeah, that should do the trick. So now I'm gonna move on to the front. Alright guys, well I gotta say, the plasma cutter definitely makes this a lot more of an enjoyable job. So much faster. I wish I would have had the guts to fire that thing up yesterday and use it to cut some of the other stuff I'm making. But it made quick work of this. I'm gonna run over to the Whizzy wheel and clean up the edges, but all in all, pretty happy with the way it turned out. I'm gonna go knock the slag off and then round some of the corners, see if this thing slips into place. Where are my gloves at? Where are my gloves at, son? Ooh, got my gloves, baby. Alright guys, well it's been another long day here at the throttle shop, and I'm pretty happy with today's turnout. All of the screws that you see are just there temporarily. Those are just holding everything together for now. We've got a nice flat overlap here, and then we have to build a plate to close this off. Very narrow, very tall, but that's because of the nature of the S2000 transmission, which has this big shift bar lever up here, and then the shifter sits really high above the drive shaft. But I think once this is all welded together and dressed up, I think it's gonna look pretty sick. I wanna give a huge shout out to Lincoln Welders. That plasma cutter saved me a heap of time today. And that's it guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Tomorrow I'm gonna come in, bust out the left side, which is the only side that's not complete.
The next day.
I went ahead and mounted our air conditioning and heater core box back in the car. I wanna take some of this material away. This flat area is really functional for our vintage air heater core box, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna chop this off here, and I'm gonna continue that upward arc that our center console has, and I'm gonna flatten it out right at the heater core. So I'm trying to think all this stuff through as I build this car, guys. I know it's taking forever to put this thing together and do all this fab work and stuff. During these times, I'm doing this stuff by myself. I got no help here, and I'm trying to move as fast as I can so you guys stay enthused about what I'm working on. But the next step is gonna be to actually build a little bracket like I did here. This is just a temporary T-bar brace that's just sitting in here to keep the tunnel at the height that I need it to be for the transmission. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably make something similar to this, just tack weld them in. This thing will basically stay in place, and then I can build everything around it. Alright guys, I haven't picked up the camera in probably an hour, hour and a half, and I went ahead and jammed out on the welding of the inner tunnel section, so I've got that burned in. Yep, still getting the hang of the welder, and got everything sort of tacked into place where I want it. It's not the prettiest of welding. This is really tough to do for me, and it's really time consuming just because I'm kind of just winging it and learning as I go. Normally people would sit down at a table and burn a bunch of lines on material and sort of learn what the welder's doing and make adjustments. Well, I'm doing that on the fly. Am I happy with the results? Yes. Are they perfect? Far from it. I feel like this is my crash course on how to learn. It's my car, it's my project, so when it's all said and done, I'm gonna be super proud of this thing. So I hope you guys can bear with me. If you guys are professional fabricators out there, you guys are the real heroes. This is some hard stuff. So not only coming up with the ideas and what to build, but then shaping the metal and then actually welding it up. So I think we're in a good spot for tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and call it quits. Tomorrow I will jump on getting the sides built up.
The next day,
we're gonna go ahead and work on the sides of the tunnels. And I also wanted to address one thing I saw in the comment section from the last video that we did. I saw a lot of you guys make comments that we don't use primer on our welds. We actually do. I don't know why you guys assume that we don't. We do use the SEM zinc weld when we're welding two panels together that are not going to be able to be painted or powder coated, and there's two raw surfaces back to back. So we do shoot those before we weld things together. So don't trip, guys. We got it under control. Alright guys, well while that weld through primer is drying real quick, I'm going to take a few minutes because the UPS man just showed up and actually has a little gift for the freak, which is so awesome. Been waiting on this for a little while, and it hasn't been a rush because we're a ways out for when we need this, but it's nice to have it here. So let's unbox it and take a look. We've got all of our Haltech goodies for the freak. So we've got a full wiring harness here. So we are going to wire this car ourselves. It has a fuse panel and every wire needed to run our own loom in the car. So I'm pretty excited about this. We're gonna be partnering with DNA Garage. They're gonna come down and help us get this all spec'd out to the chassis. We did not get a PDM yet. We are gonna be running a PDM in this car. So that thing is on order, and as soon as it gets here, we'll show that to you guys. I did go with the Haltech Elite 1500 ECU, which is a similar unit to what I run in the Bad Apple. I have the 2500 in there. and the 1500 is going to go in the Freak. In my opinion, a top of the line ECU, very nicely built, very reliable, and has weather tight seals on it, which is really awesome in case the car gets wet in a rainstorm or something like that. It's a nice sealed unit, and it does all of the things that we needed to do to run the car. Being that this is going to be a race car and a track car, I'm excited to be using the Haltech system in the car. So that is the cool electronics portion that came from Haltech that's going to run it. And now I want to show you the piece that I'm really excited about. This is one of the components I want to put in the Bad Apple, but have not had the chance yet. So the Freak is going to get it before the Bad Apple, but that's okay. I'm excited to give it a try. So this is the new Haltech IC7 display. Comes with a nice, feels like an aluminum or some sort of alloy housing. A lot of features I know because I've used a couple of these in other cars that already have them up and running. I have not used it personally in any of my cars. That's why I'm so enthused about having one. I really can't wait to plug it in. It's a simple plug and play connection when you're using the Haltech harness and ECU. So it's gonna be fun to build out a little dash utilizing the Civic housing to mount this in. So yeah, really cool to have Haltech on board with this project, and I'm really excited to get it all set up and show you guys through all the features, because the dash component is really cool, and it does a lot of different things and allows the car to be more usable straight through the dash, more like a modern car than an old analog vehicle would be, or analog race car. So really excited to pair this Haltech equipment with a PDM and get it up and running. But like I said earlier, we're still a ways out on that stuff, but it is nice to know it's here in our hands. And one thing I will note, the guys at Haltech wanted me to let you guys know that if you're in the market for an ECU or any of these bits, feel free to hit them up. They do have an office in Southern California now, which is fairly new from what I understand, and they are shipping daily. So just because of the COVID-19 stuff doesn't mean you can't get your Haltech goodies. They do have stuff in stock in Southern California, and there are other offices abroad, so they are shipping daily. So if you guys need it, hit them up and they'll get you squared away. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for tagging along with me. I know this was a bit of a lengthy video, and we only really got the tunnel kind of done. I'm gonna go start welding that thing up. The next time you see the car, it'll be all done and finished, and we'll be on to something else. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for all the comments. Turn those notifications on so when the next Freak video comes out, you guys will be notified. We'll see you in the next one.